Hello, law students and legal practitioners. Today, we will discuss the case of Norma Magsano et al. Versus Pangasinan Savings and Loan Bank et al. GR number 215038 decided by the Supreme Court on October 17, 2016. By the way, I am Sheppy, your legal shepherd in discussing law principles and jurisprudence. Let's begin. The legal doctrine of the case provides that when a spouse dies, the conjugal partnership is dissolved, and an implied co-ownership arises among the surviving spouse and the heirs over the deceased spouse's share, pending liquidation and partition. Each co-owner may alienate or mortgage only his or her ideal or undivided share, but not the entire property without the consent of the other co-owners. The effect of any such alienation or mortgage is limited to the portion that may eventually be allotted to the co-owner upon partition. A mortgage constituted by a surviving spouse over the entire property after the death of the other spouse is void with respect to the shares of the heirs who did not give consent. Consequently, foreclosure and subsequent transfers based on such mortgage are likewise ineffective as to those shares. In addition, while purchasers of registered land may generally rely on the torrent's title, this protection does not apply when the property is in the actual possession of persons other than the seller. In such cases, possession serves as constructive notice of adverse claims, and the buyer is duty-bound to investigate the nature and extent of the occupant's rights. Failure to do so negates a claim of good faith. Registration of property does not vest ownership when the transferor has no valid title over the whole property. A buyer acquires only such rights as the seller may legally convey. Any portion acquired without valid authority is held under an implied or constructive trust for the benefit of the true owners pending lawful partition. Here are the facts of this case. Spouses Roque Magsano and Susana Capello owned a parcel of land in Dagupan City covered by TCT number 48754. Roque died on April 17, 1991, which dissolved the conjugal partnership and resulted in an implied co-ownership among Susana and their children over Roque's share of the property. Despite Roque's prior death, a real estate mortgage dated July 1, 1991 was executed in favor of Pangasinan Savings and Loan Bank to secure a 35,000 pesos loan. The mortgage purported to cover the entire property. The loan went unpaid, prompting the bank to extrajudicially foreclose the mortgage. The bank became the highest bidder, consolidated ownership, and was issued a new title in its name. Thereafter, the bank sold the property to spouses Eddie Manuel and Milagros Ballesteros, who were issued TCT number 67491. At all relevant times, however, the Magsano heirs were in actual possession of the property and maintained residential structures thereon. When the heirs refused to vacate, the bank obtained writs of possession and demolition, resulting in the destruction of the heirs' houses. The heirs then filed a complaint seeking annulment of the mortgage, foreclosure sale, subsequent conveyances, and titles, arguing that the mortgage was void because Roque was already dead and because the property was a family home mortgaged without the heirs' consent. The RTC dismissed the complaint for lack of cause of action and prescription. The Court of Appeals affirmed but held that while the mortgage was void as to Roque's share, the Manuel spouses were innocent purchasers for value. This prompted the heirs to elevate the case to the Supreme Court. We will now understand how the Supreme Court resolved the following issues. Issue 1. Whether the real estate mortgage executed after Roque Magsano's death was valid. Partly valid only with respect to Susana Capello's undivided share. Void with respect to Roque Magsano's share. Upon death of a spouse, the conjugal partnership is dissolved under Article 126(1) of the Family Code. Pending liquidation, an implied co-ownership arises, governed by Article 493 of the Civil Code, which limits a co-owner's power to alienate or encumber only his or her ideal share, without prejudice to other co-owners. At the time the mortgage was executed, Roque was already deceased. Thus, Susana could not validly mortgage the entire property without the consent of the heirs. The mortgage bound only Susana's undivided interest. Accordingly, the foreclosure and subsequent transfers could not legally affect the heirs' shares, rendering the mortgage void insofar as Roque's share was concerned. Issue 2. Whether spouses Manuel were innocent purchasers for value. No, the spouses Manuel were not purchasers in good faith. Although reliance on a certificate of title is generally allowed, jurisprudence consistently holds that when property is in the possession of persons other than the seller, such possession constitutes notice of a possible defect in title. The buyer must investigate the nature of such possession, Failure to do so amounts to negligence and defeats a claim of good faith. The heirs were in open and continuous possession of the property when spouses Manuel purchased it. Records showed no meaningful inquiry or inspection by the buyers to determine the occupants' rights. This failure to exercise due diligence barred them from claiming the status of innocent purchasers for value. They merely stepped into the shoes of the bank and acquired only whatever rights the bank could validly transfer. Last issue. Issue 3. Effect of foreclosure, registration, and sale on co-ownership. Foreclosure, registration, and sale did not terminate the existing co-ownership. Registration does not create ownership, nor can a buyer acquire a better title than that of the seller. Where property is acquired through mistake or without full authority, the holder of legal title becomes a trustee under Articles 1451 and 1456 of the Civil Code. Since the bank could not legally foreclose on or sell the heirs' shares, both the bank and subsequently the Manuel spouses held those portions in implied trust for the heirs. The new title issued did not extinguish the co-ownership, and proper judicial partition was necessary to determine the exact shares of the parties. Thank you for listening and happy learning. Please don't forget to subscribe to the Legal Shepherd PH YouTube channel and click the notification bell to stay updated on newly uploaded cases and jurisprudence. See you again for our next case discussions.